The client said, "What?" Hello everyone! Welcome to Art Business with Ness. I'm Ness and I'm a professional illustrator. Today we're talking about art critique, client feedback, and more specifically, how do we deal with that? Client feedback is a normal and natural part of being a professional illustrator, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to receive critique on our work. How can we get better at that? I have several tips to share with you today. Some of them have to do with mindset, how you can shift a little bit how you see it in order to take it a little bit better. And the second part is more about practical tips. How do you actually deal with it in the moment when you receive the feedback? So let's talk about it. But right before we go into it, first of all, if you're new here and you would like to see more videos like this, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell. The bell sends you a notification every single time I upload a new video. And this way you're sure that you won't miss any of the advice. All right, let's go. So my first tip is to remember that everybody gets feedback. Yes, even the most talented artists in the world. When you work with a client, you're commissioned to create something that is not necessarily your vision. It's the art director's vision. Of course, you're bringing your stuff and your vision into it, and it's colliding with the art director's vision. Just because what you've done is amazing doesn't mean that it fits exactly what the art director had in mind. And so they will very often give you feedback to get closer to what they had in mind. It doesn't mean that they hate what you did, because sometimes when we receive client feedback, our first knee-jerk reaction is, "Oh, they hate what I did," or "I'm doing a terrible job." But that is not true at all. And I felt that it could be very reassuring to hear that every artist receives feedback. It's not a rare thing, actually, it's the norm. On almost every single project, you will receive feedback. I do all the time, rare occasions where I don't get any feedback at all. Everyone does. So it's not you, it's them. When you receive that feedback, take a deep breath and remember that this is a normal part of the process. My second mindset tip here is to remember that it's not personal. And I know that this one is very hard to internalize, because as artists, our art is our soul. When we create, we bear our soul. It's so incredibly personal to us. And so an attack on our art can feel like an attack on us. Well, first of all, client feedback is not an attack. But I know that it can feel that way because us artists, we're very sensitive people. But it is not an attack, and certainly not an attack on you. Remember that they hired you, they chose to work with you because they love your style. But still, most of the time, it's going to need some tweaks, probably to maybe convey the message better or be more marketable. So they're just trying to do their job here and help sell the product. It's absolutely not personal, it's just business. As a professional artist, it is very important to separate your sense of self with your art. Doing this will make it much easier to not see critique as a personal attack on you, and make it much easier to not get worked up every single time you receive that client feedback. And lastly, tip number 3 for mindset, it's teamwork. As the freelance illustrator, you are the art expert on the project and your client needs that expertise. However, remember, the art director has valuable expertise to bring too. Expertise that's different from what you can bring in. What they have is knowledge of what will appeal to their customer base and what will sell the best. This is crucial expertise that they're bringing to the table. Every project needs this in order to be a success. A professional gig is teamwork. There's no place here for egos. So don't make this about you and accept the art director's expertise to make this project the best that it can possibly be. When the project is the best, this benefits you too. It benefits everyone involved, and everyone has a part to play. Now, full disclosure, I actually used to be very bad at taking critique. Up until, I want to say, mid-college, I would take it really personally. It hurt me personally, and so I would react with anger. Never outwardly, mind you, but inside I'd be like, well, screw them. If they don't like my art, they could go elsewhere. This really wasn't very helpful though, and I only realized that later after I switched my major to animation, and this was a very difficult program, and suddenly I really didn't know what I was doing, and I had to accept advice from my teacher and even my peers. So I started listening to that advice more and more, and what I noticed is when I do listen to the critiques and implement the things, my artwork gets better. So that's when I started to love getting critique. I absolutely adore. One of my favorite things is take different progress shots when I'm doing a project. I do this even to this day, and then I look what it looked like before and what it looks like now, and I can see after every single feedback round, the project always gets better. Even to this day, even as a professional, there's always things that I can improve, and after feedback, it's almost always much better. I love looking at that. It makes me feel proud that I'm learning and I'm getting better and I'm making the best that I can. Once you realize that critique is not the enemy, in fact, it helps you, then it becomes a much more positive thing. The art director is on your team, so don't forget to let them do their job and help you. But now let's jump into the practical advice for how to actually physically deal with critique. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask, how do you personally deal with critique? Is this something that hurts you a lot? Are you a champ at taking critique? No matter what it is, go in the comments below and let me know. So now, it's great and all to learn to not fall apart when you receive feedback, but the best way to deal with it is still to get ahead of it and make sure to minimize the amount of things that you're going to need to change during the project, because more change means more work for you. And you probably didn't charge for 20 hours because you didn't know it was going to scope creep this much. This is a very big issue in illustration, and so I'm going to share my tips with you to get ahead of that and not get into this many changes. So my first tip here is to have really great communication with the client. By taking your time to really talk it through with the client, you can understand their vision better and avoid miscommunications. So don't hurry to jump into the project. Take your time, ask a lot of questions. Sometimes art director, they're a little hard. You have to pull at it to really get the brief out of them, but it's really time well spent. Make sure to read the brief thoroughly, ask any questions that you have, look at the mood board, do all of those things. If the information that they gave you is very sparse, then ask a lot of questions, get it out of them. Don't be shy, this is literally their job. Something you can do is send them inspiration images so they can look them over and see if you guys have a similar vision. This can be photographs or even other illustrations from other illustrators, as long as you don't use any in your actual final work. But this can help to, see if you're on the same page. Maybe you have something in mind that's very light and bright, and then they look at it and be like, oh, actually, I thought, to go darker a little bit. Well, this is much better to know in advance before you've done any of the drawing and need to change everything. My second tip is to send a lot of progress images during the project. Send them often and a lot at every single stage. Send them thumbnails, sketches, color tests, tone tests, whatever you do. And of course, a final rendering, maybe if you have 20 illustrations to do, send them one finished to see if they like the look before you do all 20 of them. Make sure that you get approval at every single stage. This is the best way to keep the project on track. If you and the art director aren't on the same page, it's great to catch it early. And this is what things like thumbnails and fast sketches are great for. My third tip is a little secret I have for you, and that's to incentivize your client to not waste your time by changing their minds 100 times. Now, feedback is important and unavoidable, but still, sometimes art directors really exaggerate a little bit. They keep changing your mind, and that's work that piles up and up for you. The best way to get ahead of that is to add a clause to your contract that limits the number of rounds of feedbacks that they are allowed to ask. 3 rounds of feedback is a good number. It's enough, but it's not too much. It keeps them on track. They really have to think about what they're going to ask and make sure that they don't go over the 3 rounds. So it just makes them more carefully and thoughtfully ask you for feedback, because sometimes clients can be like, oh, just try it out, I want to see it. If they know that they're limited to 3, then they will think about it more before they give you more work. So have this in your contract. Now, if you're having trouble with contract, I go into a lot of details in my Art Business Bootcamp Level 2 course. If you're interested in that, I'll leave the link in the description below. And finally, my last tip is to use your judgment. Sure, learning to take feedback well is a crucial skill, but you don't want to take it too far and just say yes to every single thing. Sometimes they're bad ideas. There has been a few times in my career when I received client feedback and I was like, seriously, you want me to do that? It's gonna ruin the whole thing. If you are in a situation like this and you have concerns about the feedback, say something. Politely, of course, but say something. You are the art expert on the project and it's up to you to bring up those topics. You were hired to give your expertise, were you not? So when you receive feedback, look at it critically. Sure, keep an open mind, but really think about it and remember your artistic knowledge. So if the tweak that they are suggesting will completely destroy the balance of the composition, then say that. Explain it to them so that they understand. As long as you are being polite and matter of fact, it is always a good thing to speak up about these things because we're all trying to make the best project that we can here. Now, of course, pick your battle. Sometimes they ask for a lot of little changes that are really not that consequential. So you may not want to open up a big debate over something that is so small. Keep some goodwill for the big things that really matter to you. And if ever you receive feedback and you're a little bit unsure about it, you have concerns where you're like, oh, maybe it'll work, then try it out. You might be surprised. Most art directors really know what they're doing and often they make very good suggestions. There were many times in my career when I received feedback and I was like, are you sure? But then I tried it out and was like, actually this works, this is nice. So give it a shot and you will see then. And you can always send them, 2 versions, one with your tweaks, one with their tweaks, and explain to them why you think yours is better. And then we will see what happens with that. Sometimes when you argue like this, you won't always get your way, but sometimes they will see your point of view and agree with you. So it's always important to speak up. So, are you ready to tackle your own client feedback with aplomb? Yes! So the first thing you'll need is some clients. If you would like help in getting some of those, and I have something that might interest you. It's a free guide. It's called 7 Surprising Ways to Find Illustration Clients. As I said, it is completely free, and I will leave the link to that in the description below. But that's it for me today. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help our small channel grow. I will be back with more videos sharing my expertise in the freelance illustration work, so make sure not to miss any of that. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!